Good afternoon and welcome to the Growth Company's How to Ensure Good Mental Health and Wellbeing in the Workplace webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. This is part of the Here for Business campaign, which the Business Growth Hub is currently running to support businesses throughout the challenges that are being presented by coronavirus. My name is Jackie Musson and I work for the Growth Company, and as part of Mental Health Awareness Week, we thought it would be fitting to structure this webinar around understanding the importance of good mental health and wellbeing in the workplace, aligned to the additional challenges that coronavirus has created for us all. Our aim is to provide practical advice and guidance to help you support your workforce during this challenging time. So there is an option for you to ask questions for our audience. So just ping your question into the question box, which should be on your screen now, and we can pose those to our expert panel. The session is planned to last for about 45 minutes. So joining on this webinar today, we have Emma Balfe, who is Business Development Head of Services at Mind in Tameside, Oldham and Glossop. Robert Downs, Development Manager from the Federation of Small Business. Jane Garnsey, who's People Operations Director at TalkTalk. And Alana Linney, Commercial Director at Bupa. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So to kick things off, we have a few sort of themes that we're going to run through today, looking at some of the challenges which businesses are going to be facing around the mental health and well-being of their people, as the part relaxation of rules from the government around coronavirus start to be implemented. So the first question really is, the government would now like people to start returning to work, which obviously raises a number of questions for businesses around safe working environments, as well as the manager-employee relationship and employee wellbeing. So Jane, I wonder if you could share with us some of the things that have been discussed and potentially implemented at TalkTalk with regards to people bringing people back into the office environment.
Yes, no problem. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think it's important to say that for the last sort of 8-9 weeks, we've had 98% of our sort of 2,300 employees working from home. We do have a sort of field engineering team and a sort of skeleton staff of about 10 people that have been coming into our office in Salford throughout this time. And I think the first thing I just wanted to kind of mention is that although the government is the government guidelines at the moment are to start to transition people back to offices, it still very much is work from home if you can. So I think the first thing we've really had to consider is we just had to tread quite carefully with our messaging around coming back to the office when really the government guidelines, and we've proven that people can work from home quite successfully. So that's the first thing that we just had to think through in terms of how do we get people to start trickling back to the office when the government guidelines say work from home, and actually people have been really successfully working from home. So what we decided to do, we did a categorization survey. We sent that out to all of our colleagues, over 2,000 colleagues, and we got about 1,400 responses back. And we asked people to categorize themselves into, are they homeschooling children and therefore physically can't get to an office really? Are they vulnerable and therefore shielding? Are they would they prefer to be at home for now? And then we had 2 questions around, actually, I would prefer to be in the office, either through because of my well-being and my mental health, or because my work environment at home isn't conducive really to successfully working productively. And we had 32 people across those 2 categories. So what we did is we decided to approach those people to say, we'd really like to welcome you back to the office. You've expressed that you would prefer to be in the office, so would you be up for being one of our trialists? And we've had really positive feedback from that basically, 95% of the organisation don't feel pressured to come back. Actually, some of them would find it practically impossible to come back into the office right now. So they feel reassured that they're not having any pressure to. But then these people that want to come in are feeling really happy that they're able to do so in a safe way. So I suppose that's been kind of how we've approached it. Might not be right for every business, but that's kind of what's felt good for us. And actually, we've received really positive feedback, and that seems to be going well. And then I would probably just classify the sort of things that we've done and implemented in three main areas, really. Communication, and I know it sounds cheesy and really it's common sense, really, but communication is key. Reassurance, messages led by the senior team, constantly reiterating government guidelines, taking it slow. We've got 4 words around the whole return to the office. It's safe, gradual, structured, and flexible. So we've just kept reiterating those messages. And then the second thing is obviously health and safety. So, there's in the guidelines that came out, the draft workplace guidelines, there's a stipulation that organisations do a full risk assessment, that they engage and consult with their employees. So we've done all of that, and that seems to have gone down well. And then all the practical elements, the third thing being all the practical elements around the facilities. So one-way systems, signage, induction back into the office, what we want you to do, following the rules, washing your hands, keeping the 2-metre social distancing, and making sure there's plenty of signage around the place with that. And we've got quite a big office in 4 floors, and we're starting with just 1 floor at the moment for this trial. So they're kind of, it just gives you a flavour of, I've probably missed loads off because it's been a bit of a good time, but that just gives you a flavour of how we approached it and some of the things that we've implemented to try and make it successful. And certainly the early feedback, this trial only started yesterday, will run for 2.5 weeks, and the feedback's been great over the past 24 hours.
Oh, fantastic. Robert, I think it would be quite interesting to sort of draw upon what Jane's covered there from the point of view of a smaller business and some of the challenges that they might face in a smaller environment.
Small businesses perhaps have, in essence, an easier sort of way of doing this, because I think a lot of them, those who can work from home at the moment will continue to work from home, but I think there's going to be probably 2 types of businesses: those that can continue to work from home, and those that will need to be back in work. Perhaps retail, that kind of thing, manufacturing, where they will need to actually be in the business. From our experience, from our conversations with our members, those sort of more office-based businesses, at the moment, that they're actually not planning for staff to return anytime soon. I know the message from government has been, if you can, go to work, you do. But I think a lot of smaller businesses who are speaking to their staff, the feedback is, if we can work from home safely and it's not a problem to the business and it's not impacting, they're going to continue to do that. We're hearing a lot of businesses possibly sort of thinking maybe a return to work in July, see how it goes. Obviously, getting staff into work is a big issue, especially in Greater Manchester. We haven't got, fantastic public transport systems, and in the state of lockdown that we're going to be in, in the state of reduced capacity, we're going to have real issues getting staff into work safely, and I think that's really important. So I think the message should be, if you can work from home, continue to do so. The businesses that are having to get staff back in, so manufacturing, retail, that kind of thing, that they've got an issue on hand around getting the staff there safely, and then how to make sure staff feel safe, because I think a lot of it is about making sure that staff feel safe at work. So that might be, your hand sanitizer, that kind of thing, the social distancing, and I think in smaller businesses where perhaps they are a smaller business physically as well, there's challenges there around making staff sure that are socially distanced. So there's lots of unique challenges for smaller businesses. But I think what they must do is to speak to their staff. Communication is really, really key. They need to speak to the staff, listen to what their concerns are, what their anxieties are, and be aware that that each staff, or all of their staff, will have their own sort of unique issues, but it might be childcare. If they're being asked to continue working from home, have they got childcare? Are other schools all going to reopen? So lots of things to think about. But I think that the real key is communication with staff to hear what everyone's issues are.
Okay, that's grand. Emma, I think it would be good if we could hear from you there about some of the resources that employers can access to support their employees with this transition.
So there's some really, really good, and in terms of wellbeing and mental health, which should really be embedded as a response. A wellbeing strategy should be embedded as a response, as also part of your exit strategy for returning to work. The Mental Health First Aid for England website has some really good resources on how to embed preventative approaches for your staff on how to spot signs and symptoms of common mental health issues, particularly post-COVID. The government has also done an independent review with National Mind, called Thriving at Work, which is a national paper including 6 core and 4 enhanced standards for how organisations can better support employees' mental health. And that's a really, really good read for employees and employers. Also, keep an eye out for your local Mind branch. If you've got a local Mind branch, a lot of them at the moment are offering free wellbeing taster sessions for individuals. Refer to Every Mind Matters at the NHS website, and also the National Mind website has some really good information on COVID and your mental health. So things you need to spot for in terms of your employees.
Oh, that's interesting. We've put together actually an online resource which has some of these resources all in one location, which we'll share with people who are participating afterwards, and it links to most of those that you mentioned. That's great. So Alana and Jane, I think that one of the things that Robert touched on there is actually the issue of public transport. So those employees which do have to travel into work but aren't able to rely on public transport, what guidance can we give to other businesses, or what things have you been looking at for how to get your employees able to attend?
So from a Bupa perspective, it's been a really interesting 10 weeks because whilst we're really known as an insurance business, we've actually got 50 clinics around the UK. And as you can imagine, everything that we do within that clinical environment has historically been face-to-face. So primary care, physiotherapy, mental health services. And as we start to return our staff into that environment, particularly within our London clinics, a lot of people do have to take public transport, which is the one area that people are feeling most resistant to or most scared about. Practical things that we've done is that we've looked at potentially moving staff so that they are working in their closest location. So actually looking at how we can mobilise the workforce in a different way. Second thing that we've done is that we've extended our cycle to work schemes and encouraging people. So we're putting additional bike stands within all of our facilities and looking at ways in which we can encourage people to move safely through towns and cities. Outside of London, it's less of a problem because typically the staff commute, outside of London and Manchester, I should say, typically staff are commuting by car. So people are feeling much more confident and secure in that respect. But you're absolutely right, where people are having to access public transport is where we're meeting the most concern, and we're working really hard to allay their fears there.
Well, that's great. Is that similar? Have you anything?
I think just to add to that, at Talk, we one of our sort of, I suppose, criteria for our trialists was that they could either drive, walk, or cycle. So we in adhering to the government guidelines, we reiterated that really we should be avoiding public transport, and therefore our trialists needed to be able to come in via some other means. And actually, we've had people walking miles to get in, and they've chosen that. We've got facilities already at our offices in terms of we've got an on-site car park which doesn't usually house all of our staff, and that causes lots of upset. So actually the trialists that are coming in, the fact that they're able to park on site is a big win. So they're happy with that. And then just encouraging the cycling and the walking, which luckily many of our employees can do.
Oh, fantastic. Lots of things I think businesses can kind of take on there and consider for their own operations. So the next area that we're going to have a look at is employee wellbeing. So obviously we've touched upon that throughout some of those discussions, but actually, as many people are continuing to work from home, and potentially this could be going on for quite a long time, many of those people, myself included, have parental duties, and with children off, certainly for the moment, and with unknown plans around what's happening with the schools, there's quite an additional pressure on people who are working home with that additional with work and childcare to manage. So Emma, I think it would be really interesting from a mental health and wellbeing perspective. What would you say are the key issues that employers need to be looking out for in that instance?
I think in terms what we would say, what we've done at Mind, Tainted Oldham Gloss at Mind, is that we've made sure that it's a collaborative process. So we've developed a structured yet flexible approach to returning to work, but also embedding a wellbeing strategy like we would always do as a mental health charity within that, to make sure that for every stage of that phased return, that it's based on employee insights. So the communication and the delivery of the plan is based on first getting volunteers, based on people that feel that they want to return to work, and getting them to volunteer to be part of a planning group with some of the senior management team. Secondly, being very, very careful and making sure you kind of keep an eye on protected characteristics of certain staff members and some of the risks they may need to face, to be very sensitive towards that. We've also been doing a lot of communication as a senior management team on a weekly basis to the staff team, continuous consultation and engagement about what the plan is, what it looks like, staff thoughts on the plan. Also, the senior leadership team have been showing their vulnerabilities, which I think is really, really important in this moment in time, and saying that these are things that we've struggled with this week. These are the 5 ways to wellbeing and the tools we're utilising at the moment to make us feel better during the situation, to show that from leadership, that the leadership team do have vulnerabilities as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Alana, so what things should we be doing as employers to support working parents at this time?
So it's actually a really interesting topic. I'm also a mum to a 4-year-old boy who I think can smell weakness. So as soon as I'm on something like this, he's like in asking for stuff, and it's like I have to throw him fruit or something to keep him quiet. But I actually wrote a blog post on LinkedIn about being a working mum during a pandemic, and it got huge engagement, because I think actually being human and transparent and honest in this time has got a lot of benefits, and it is hard. And I was fed up of watching women with their children, managing work, doing Joe Wicks, showing this kind of veneer of perfection, which I don't think is realistic or achievable. So I kind of wrote the Good Mum blog, which was just saying, look, it is really hard. And we all start this with the best intentions. I wake up every morning saying that my son isn't going to watch, bizarrely, She-Ra for 8 hours a day, but what She-Ra he does. And I think it's important to say that, actually, this is really difficult. Sometimes the aspirations around home learning, whilst you're managing a big job, are unachievable, and you can't do everything. I think allowing flexibility within your team to say, actually, you need to break down the day so that you can spend some time with your child. Because, my 4-year-old doesn't understand if I'm at home, and why aren't I playing with him? He doesn't understand that this isn't a holiday. And, he's picked up real kind of corporate vernacular. So he starts saying to me things like, what, mum, have you got to do another call? Or are you dialing into such and such? Which, coming out of a 4-year-old's mouth is just odd. But I think one of the things that, with all of these situations, there's always positives and negatives. And the real positive, I think, from a corporate perspective, is that people are human. We see signs of humanity everywhere. As we came onto the call, we've already seen, of the people that are speaking, 2 of their family members. Like, what access do you get before into people's homes? And I think from a mental health perspective, which is what we're here to talk about today, that honesty and transparency, and actually that human element to work, which I think has been missing for a long time, it shows that actually we are all real people, irrespective of what level you're working in at the organisation. And actually, if your child wants a banana halfway through your presentation, it's not the end of the world. It's natural and it's normal, and we should all be very accepting of that, I think, during this time.
It's quite interesting, sort of challenging what our expectations of professionalism look like, isn't it? That's fantastic. One of our audience members has actually asked a question which sort of relates to this. As a manager, what are the signs of mental health issues that we should look out for? Emma, I guess we'll come to you first, but I think as managers, you could feed into that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the hot topics, I think, for us at the moment is particularly colleagues who have significant childcare responsibilities, like other speakers have mentioned, where they are doing stretched hours. So they may be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning before the kids are awake, and that might stretch till 6 o'clock at night, because the children are at an age where they don't understand what mummy or daddy's doing, but they're having to meet the needs of the child first, and then try and do the work. And I think we're now looking at, as an organisation, it's not about being presenteeism. It's not about being present for work and doing those hours. It's about what you do within those hours. So it's about having realistic, looking at what outcomes and outputs those people have achieved in a week, in realistic timeframes, perhaps not in their core hours, but in realistic timeframes. So taking a bit of pressure off in terms of time management.
Okay. And Robert, it'd be interesting to kind of hear what you think about that from a small businesses perspective, particularly obviously in some of the micro businesses where there's just a few people operating.
It's certainly not business as usual at the minute. We are in uncharted territory, and I think most business owners do recognise that their staff, are doing something fairly unprecedented. A lot of them are working from home where they can, and it's not the same as working, in the office or in the workplace. And I think most small business owners do sort of recognise that, and the smaller the business, probably the better they understand their staff. They probably have more engagement with their staff than perhaps your bigger businesses with 2,000 staff. The manager knows them. So I think it is difficult, but I think it's managing expectation. Someone mentioned earlier about a lengthened working day. I possibly advise against having a too stretched a day, because working from home can be stressful. It can be a bit Marmite, working from home. People will love it, or they will not like it at all. And I think the people who don't like it are possibly the ones who have the childcare responsibilities. They perhaps haven't got an ideal setup for working from home, haven't got office space. I mean, my job actually is based from home, so for me this is fairly standard stuff, and I like it. I like the role, but I think businesses need to be aware that it's not for everyone. And then going back to work, I think that should be a conversation that businesses have with their staff. Do you want to work from home? Do you want to carry on working from home, or would you want to come back in? And I think that's something they should definitely have a discussion with their staff about, and maybe prioritising the ones who are finding it a challenge to go back into the workplace first, and allowing those who are happy to work from home to continue to do so.
I'll just add to that. I think we actually had a conversation in my team meeting this morning about this very thing, and I was sort of talking to them. I mean, Lynn, who's asked the question, I think all managers will know their team. They'll be able to pick up on signals. They'll be able to pick up if someone's unusually quiet or unusually loud or whatever it might be, just little cues. But what I do think is hard with managing remotely is that it's often difficult to pick up on those cues at the moment, because when you're in an office environment, you might see someone looking a bit sad or looking a bit lost or a bit frustrated or a bit stressed, and you'll go, oh, should we just go and grab 5 minutes for coffee? You don't look yourself today. Whereas, and I found that I have sort of formal one-to-ones for half an hour, like every week with everyone, and they'll tell me something about happened the week before in this one-to-one, and I'll be like, why didn't you pick up the phone? And they're like, oh, I didn't think to, and I'm like, oh, so I think it's, as a manager, I think it's encouraging your team to sort of, I suppose, acknowledge that we're not all in an office together every day, but I'm available. Call me, talk to me, and inviting that conversation outside of sort of formal online meetings, because otherwise it is hard to pick up on the cues and it is hard to know kind of where everyone's head is at.
Yeah, and I would perhaps add to that as well. You know, working from home, it probably requires better and more structured communication than when people are in the office. It's useful, I think, for teams sometimes to have regular catch-ups, perhaps more than they would in the office. I know we have 2 team meetings a week, and on a Friday we have we have a 1-hour quiz where we can just sort of kick back, and it's good to just have a informal chat with colleagues, because you're not your workstation buddy to be chatting with, and I think that can be helpful, as can regular communication with the managers, and even if there's nothing to communicate, it's still probably important to tell them that we've got nothing to tell you, but it's still a communication and a touch point with staff.
I think, from just coming back to personal experience, this idea of working from home and childcare, the two things are very difficult to do at the same time, and personally, I found it extremely overwhelming. As someone's quite senior within the business, I actually didn't feel that I had the permission, or that I would be letting people down to take the time off. And I think as people who are managing teams, or people who have got that kind of responsibility for other people within the business, that permission might be something that proactively given enables people to feel a lot better about the situation. I personally was thinking about taking 3 weeks off at the beginning of this, because I just didn't feel like I was able to manage my time and give the business what they needed. Having the conversation with the team, what I realized was actually building time and putting in a routine into my day was going to be much more helpful. So, I know that I work from 9 till 11, then I have 2 hours with my son, and we go for a walk or a run together and kind of burn off some energy, and then come back into a working environment. But that clarity and setting expectations, and at Bupa, we're very lucky, we do something called performance energy, where we talk about our non-negotiables. Now, for me, my non-negotiable during this time is that I have those 2 hours with my son, to enable me to be focused on him and to give him what he needs for a period of time, so that I can get back into work and not feel, frankly, guilty the whole time. So I think that from a personal perspective has been something that has really worked.
I think one of the things that you're all talking about there obviously sort of stems back to that good communication piece, which we flagged right at the beginning. So what sort of technique, what's worked well that you found within your workplaces? What are the important things that need to happen in terms of a one-to-one relationship, and equally, actually, with that childcare workplace balance? I think one of the things I find personally is that the nice to have things that they're very difficult to fit in. So how do you manage that as an employer?
Yeah, I think what's really worked well for us at Mind is that we're the lead for delivering a public health approach, a wellbeing programme called Connect 5. And we've been called and repurposed as a response to COVID to support a lot of the redeployed local authority staff across GM, and working a lot with adult social care teams and the voluntary and community sector. And in the first stage of Connect 5 Module 1 is around training up staff and colleagues to have wellbeing conversations with each other, or wellbeing conversations with clients. So what we found with the evaluation of the pilot groups we've been running with this approach is that people are understanding how to broach and talk about mental health and mental well-being in the workplace with colleagues, but they're also developing some resilience for themselves in utilising these tools for themselves. So, for example, the 5 ways to well-being, or making every contact count, and also getting a better understanding of not having to fix when somebody discloses that they aren't feeling good and they're not in a good space, that it's not your role to fix that person, it's your role to listen, and to give those people that are listening, actively listening, the right resources and signposting information to the relevant professional organisations across the region that can help.
Interesting. Jane, did you have anything sort of on that? What technique you've been using?
Yeah, I think think, I mean, as a large organisation, as you would expect, we've got things like an employee assistance program that we've promoted heavily. We've published lots of support links on these sort of dedicated intranet pages with all our coronavirus updates. We've pointed people in the direction of Mind and other charities that we partner with. We've had guest speakers in on things like resilience. So we actually had Sally Gunnell. She came in and talked about resilience. There's another guy called, he runs a session called the Resilience Donut, which if you've not heard of it, have a quick Google. And he's called John Shepherd, and he's a great speaker. And he talks about your resilience donut and the things that make up how you can be resilient. And that was really well received by our colleagues. We do have a wellbeing network as well, sort of a wellbeing community, which is employee led, and they've held drop-ins and coffee mornings. They've shared blogs. I mean, we've got quite an inclusive, a good culture at TalkTalk that allows people to feel comfortable sharing these things on the intranet. So we've had lots of people being quite honest and open about how they're coping, how they might be struggling, but what they've done to try and overcome it. So actually, it's been quite a sort of internal dialogue about this stuff, where people have been sharing and learning together, which has been really nice to see, actually. I would say that we are constantly learning on this one, though. I think there's lots more for us to do and think about. I think we need to engage our people managers and give them some real training on helping them to lead and manage with empathy. I think that's what's needed in these times. More lots of empathy and guidance and reassurance and flexibility, and attention, and it's different to how we've all had to manage before. It's very different. So I think there's lots more we can do to equip. We've got 330 people managers that are all impacting our colleagues on a day-to-day basis, whether that's negatively or positively with their actions. So I think we can do more to engage them and make sure they're leading in the right way. And I think the other flip side to the sort of remote working, although it does present lots of benefits that we're hearing people talk about, there's also this, not least the other distractions like Lana's talked about with homeschooling and feeling the guilt and not being able to do anything properly because you're trying to do too much. I think that's a real risk that we need to acknowledge and help people with. But there's also this kind of always on culture that I'm quite worried about, that I think we need to educate people who are not used to working from home exactly on how to work from home. I think there's you read about it on LinkedIn and all sorts, that there's this kind of fear and guilt that if you just break for lunch for half an hour and you watch a bit of Loose Women, that somebody's watching you, somebody's got a camera in your house and you're going to get told off. And it's like, actually, so it's about trust and empowerment, actually, and making sure that people don't go the other way and never switch off, because that will be counterproductive as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the kind of interesting things we've not touched upon is the obviously large number of people that have been furloughed through the process, and actually the importance of maintaining communications with those people throughout. Is that something that you've been doing at TalkTalk?
We actually don't have any colleagues on furlough. Everyone's still working. In fact, we redeployed early on when our offshore contact centres in Manila in South Africa went down literally overnight. Their lockdown happened overnight. We had 200 volunteers across the organisation to go and work on the front line, answering social media and dealing with customer queries. So that was a challenge, really good, but a challenge to get all those people trained up in a short space of time and that kind of thing. So we've not had to furlough anyone, but we've sort of redistributed people as we've needed to. I think although we've not got anyone furloughed, obviously we've got 98% of people working virtually and remotely. So we've definitely had to put things in place to keep communication flowing with them. We have daily blogs from our ExCo senior leadership team, and our CEO has been very present doing little video blogs at home. And we've got sort of other colleagues that have shared, like as I said before, shared their learnings and of how they're making things work. And actually, and we've been celebrating along the way, although initially it was very, very hard and our customer service was not where we wanted it to be, and we're only slowly starting to get to some semblance of normality on that side. Actually, there's been loads that has happened within the company, such as digital transformation acceleration. That it was an all hands on deck. We need to change this, we need to do that to get our customers self-serving online more. So there's been some real team effort and collaboration that's really brought the organisation together and fostered a sort of team spirit. So we've really acknowledged and celebrated those key things through our communications. And like I touched on before, we've had some guest speakers. We had Mr. Motivator come and do an online workout, and that was amazing for sort of getting our colleagues talking. They were all sharing pictures of themselves and their families in Lycra on our intranet. So we've tried and tested a few things to basically keep our colleagues together. Is the kind of mission really, and the motive is to keep people connected, even though and people are saying that they are feeling more connected. I think we've touched on it today, sort of seeing people's kids and asking about people's houses and doing on Friday quizzes as a team. People are sort of getting to know each other on another level. So I think that's how we've kind of made the best of this situation, really.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that GM Minds, we've been doing wellbeing sessions every morning.
Right.
Staff team, 30-minute wellbeing sessions in the morning. And we have a weekly mindfulness course in the morning at 8 o'clock every Friday morning as well. The take-up's been quite good. Obviously, as a leading mental health charity in the UK, you wouldn't, that is actually central to our values and our culture. But we've found that's really helped. It's debrief staff. It's let staff be themselves. It's let staff show their vulnerabilities. So it's created some really good dialogue with colleagues.
I would add into this conversation though, the very fact that we're here sort of discussing, well-being and that kind of thing. I think, if this had happened 10 years ago, I don't think the country would have been as geared up as we are now for it. People perhaps, I think 10 years ago wouldn't have known what well-being was as much now. FSB has one of its member benefits is something called FSB Care. I've had that for a number of years, and you get free physio and that kind of chiropractor. 5 years ago, we added a well-being element to that. So we have a mental health well-being nurse practitioner, and if our members have a problem, they can ring up and access those services. And I think it's great that we now are aware of this, because I think it's quite a recent thing, this, but I think people have risen to it, and I think it's very much part of big business, small business. I think it's very much part of the culture now, and I think it's great to see.
Oh, that's great. I'm just conscious that we're coming sort of towards the end of our time, so I think it would be really good if I could kind of work around you all and thinking about our audience as business leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises and potentially self-employed people. What would you think would be your key takeaway today that they should consider and perhaps look at implementing in their businesses or their operations? Alana, welcome.
So I think what I've heard today is kind of themes around authenticity and transparency, and where you're managing businesses, irrespective of the size, how you communicate is obviously going to be key, and giving people permission to work flexibly and giving people permission to be honest about how they're feeling is really important. We've got a load of free resources that I can share with you guys afterwards, and there's kind of some more serious stuff that we haven't spoken about today. So there are things around bereavement that people are experiencing and how we manage that as businesses, and there's a lot of information that we'll give actually to the team, and they can circulate. But I think with all of these things, there are positives and then negatives, and I think the positives are that we are becoming much more human as businesses, and that's really great to see, and allowing people more flexibility. I guess one of the things that I've been really interested in is looking at some statistics. Only 9% of people want to return to work in the way that they did before. And I think that is a really interesting thing when we start to think about what this kind of, in inverted commas, normal looks like. Because I think it's highly unlikely, irrespective of business size, people are going to be going back into that office environment, or certainly not full time. But what I don't think that means is this kind of big leach into our social lives. So I think we now have an opportunity as business owners and business leaders to think about exactly what does, working for the future look like. And that's, for me, quite exciting. Thank you.
Fabulous. I'll just build on Alana, because actually my sort of takeaway from the last 9 weeks, certainly in the feedback from our over 2,000 colleagues, has been how much they've welcomed the open and honest and transparent and authentic, as Alana said, communications. I think we've just been humble. We've been kind of proceeding with caution, learning as we go, following the government advice, being honest that we don't have all the answers. And that has gone a long way, and it's been really welcomed by people. So that would be my main takeaway. I mean, it's common sense, really, and probably something that many people listening have already thought about, but I can sort of speak from experience over the last 8 weeks that that's been the most thing that people have welcomed and have felt reassured by.
Oh, fantastic. Robert, do you want to jump in there?
I think the new sort of new is still being formulated, but I suspect that it's gonna. A lot of businesses are going to be reevaluating how they do stuff, their processes, and I think actually the public sector are probably a little bit ahead of the private sector in terms of allowing staff to work from home, and I think. There was possibly smaller businesses were a little bit hesitant about allowing staff to work from home through choice, but I think now this has probably forced the issue, and I think a lot of them will be looking towards letting an element of their staff perhaps be more flexible and work from home for a certain portion of the week going forward. So I think what's essential is that businesses actually can help their staff work from home, and I think. If at the moment people are working from home as a sort of as an emergency measure, but going forward they will need to think about health and safety, making sure they have the right IT, headphones, that kind of thing for conference calls, the right workstations. So there's quite a few things they have to think about. I think going forward in those areas.
Oh, grand. Emma.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that. From our point of view, what's really important is that you embed a wellbeing strategy into your business as a COVID response. That works with how colleagues talk to each other about wellbeing, how line managers talk to their employees about wellbeing, and how senior managers lead on a wellbeing strategy. Obviously, GM Mind is well placed to support businesses with that, and we have training packages for that. And also, I know that Lisa has just asked a question about mental health first aid courses. GM Mind do deliver mental health first aid courses across GM, and we have had a significant increase from corporates at the moment wanting that support, which is great.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I think that kind of brings us to the close of the session today. So thanks very much to all the guest speakers for participating, and we really appreciate you giving up your time like that. Some of the resources that were discussed during this session on the slide, which is here just now. I'd also definitely direct people to wellbeing.growthco.uk for some information about some of the training and wellbeing information that we're able to provide here at the Growth Company. The last thing to say is that this will be available as a video to rewatch if people really want to. You're welcome to come and view it again. And we'll also be in touch with everyone to let them know, to give them some information about some of the resources that some of our speakers have mentioned today. This is the third in a series of webinars, and we have further sessions taking place in different workplaces, and that includes a focus on the hospitality, retail and leisure sector, a skills and training for businesses in the emerging economy, which is taking place next Thursday, and we're also taking a closer look at digital and cybersecurity, which has obviously been a rising issue throughout coronavirus. Finally, the Business Growth Hub is here for you. If you're a business and you need some support, please do get in touch. We have a wealth of experience and expertise in guiding businesses through challenges like this. So thank you, and I hope you all have a very good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.